Yeah. We've got a lot of people waiting.
Yeah. We've got a lot of people waiting.
Oh, there we go. Look at you.
Yeah. We've got a lot of people waiting. Oh, there we go. Look at you.
Okay, we're all set for live stream.
That was extremely delayed.
Yeah. Well, there's two layers there. There's the actual YouTube and then there's the website. So it's going to be delayed. And I'm turning on recording in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go. Transcript is live. I'm going to start admitting everyone.
How's everybody doing?
Hey, Steve.
Everybody doing all right?
Yeah, how about you?
Yeah.
Well, man, doing really well. Thanks.
Hey, thank you for the card too. That was very nice.
Oh man, no worries. No worries. That's the least we could do, man. We definitely appreciate your support. So. Nice shirt, Bob. I'm digging it.
See? Yeah, everyone loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, point. What? You're going to be part of this conversation, bud? Because I don't think you have much to add. Now we got buckets of people coming on. There we go. Yeah, 12 o'clock.
probably give it until 12:10 at the latest, unless we feel like we have everybody on in the next few minutes.
Yeah, I think people will need just a few.
Well, they didn't know what time it started, didn't they?
I would hope. It's been advertised a little bit. Cookie, someone played a trick on you and put a crappy hat on your head. Jokes and jokes and jokes.
Good to see you too, Mike. How are you?
So good. You
Oh, fabulous.
good. Got 42 people joined at this point. We're getting mighty close to game time. There we go. Still got people joining. Just so you guys know that if you have folks that are wanting to watch at home, that everything is live streamed at the website. All you have to do is go to www.uswra.org. It's also live on our YouTube channel. Just so you guys know. Sometimes people really, really like watching meetings. I'm sure this will be the best one they've ever seen. If you guys wouldn't mind doing me a solid, if you could go to participants on the right side, and you can hover over your name, and it'll give you the option of more, and you can go to rename. You can put your team name in there, and then it'll be part of the record. If you don't, I'm not going to hold it against you, but it might make things a little easier. Thank you, everyone who's helping out with that. Got the Chi-Town Bears. Heck yeah. And also we have closed captioning. Kind of cool this year. I'm kind of lucked into that one. What do you say, Noah? Like 2 more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. I think Karen Banfield just likes to join this meeting again and again. I'm going to go ahead and guess she's on a racetrack today.
No, I'm actually at home, but every time I go to do something, like I turn around and I can't hear you guys.
Well, there's not much being said. I think I'm the only one talking, so don't feel like you're missing out.
Oh, but I am, because I see the little words at the bottom and I'm like, oh, I don't know what's going on.
Oh.
All right, it's 10 after now. You want to get going?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, first, thanks for everybody for joining and spending some of your Saturday with us. I'll start off just by asking everybody to stay on mute until you're called on to speak, and you can raise your hand in that little chat box, and it'll signal that you want to say something. When we get to the proposals, Dr. Cottingham is going to help me and act as our parliamentarian. We're going to try to keep things as expedient as possible, get through this But if anybody does have anything that they want to say after a proposal is read by the representative whose proposal it was, you will have a chance to speak. So and then any member can make a motion and anybody else can second that, just so you know. And that's it. We can kick this party off. Mike Klanowski, do you want to do roll call?
I so desperately want to do roll call. So let's start this party off. We're going to go team by team that's registered. I just need a verbal yes. And obviously, if you're not here, a no will not happen. So, okay, Ability 360. Do we have someone present? Sounding like a no. Boise Bombers, do we have anyone present? Just as a reminder, folks that do not attend the AGM, especially since it's virtual, there's a $200 fine. So guess we're making money today.
Feel free to call your friends and tell them to hop on real quick.
Absolutely. We don't actually want to find people. We just want people to be here. Brooks Bandits.
Here.
Carolina Crash.
Here.
Chicago Bears.
Here.
St. Louis Spartans.
Here.
Dallas Fort Worth Rangers. Detroit Rugby Football Club.
This is Nick from Grand Rapids. I'm proxying. I don't know.
Okay,
Is that fine? Just say that. I don't know if Dave sent something.
appreciate it. We got you. Gaylord Jammers.
Yeah, that's me. I'm here.
Excellent. And Grand Rapids is here. Denver Harlequins.
Here.
Excellent. High Five Storm.
Yeah.
Houston Texans.
Yes.
KC Revolution.
Yep.
Lakeshore Demolition.
Yes.
Las Vegas High Rollers.
I'm here. Excuse me, I'm here.
Excellent. Maryland Mayhem.
Yes.
MedStar.
Here.
New York Warriors.
Here.
Northeast Passage Wildcats.
Yes, sir.
All right, all right. Northridge Knights.
Here.
Ohio Buckeye Blitz.
Here.
Oscar Mike Militia.
Here.
Philly Eagles.
Here.
Pittsburgh Steelwheelers.
Here.
Raleigh Sidewinders. Anyone from Raleigh? Akron Rhinos.
Yes.
Excellent. Rise.
I'm here.
Excellent. Seattle let me know that they had to step out for a second, so they'll be back. Shepherd Smash.
Here.
Sportable Possum.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Anyone from San Diego? How about Texas?
Here.
Excellent. U of A Wildcats, we've got Josh Wheeler. The The Lightning from Wausau, CKRI.
Here.
Western New York Wreckers.
Present.
Excellent. WWAR Warriors.
Yeah, I'm here.
Heck of a job, folks. We have quorum. Always nice to say that. All right.
Now,
All
can
good.
Can I make a motion to approve the 2021 AGM minutes?
I second.
Right home. Okay, now we're going to get to the fun part of the reports. I'm going to keep mine pretty simple because I got a feeling the rest of the group is going to reiterate a lot of things that I had written in mine. But I just want everybody to know how thankful I am that you all were able to pull off an amazing season. Everybody involved on all the teams, the refs, the classifiers, the COVID task force, the board. I'm thrilled that we have the Low Point team that's going to be competing soon in World Games, and everybody involved with that has been doing a great job. This is an awesome opportunity, and I'm glad so many people stepped up to the plate to make that possible. And then I've been really impressed with the relationship that we've had with USAWR. Everybody, Jen, Mandy, Amy, Ann, all the work that's gone into making us compliant and ensuring that USAWR will be competing in the Tokyo Paralympics without any hiccups from a compliance standpoint. That was awesome. And I'm just honored to continue serving. So thank you for the opportunity. It's been a great year. It was really cool. I just want to say, to see all the things that we had planned during COVID and all that work that went in the off season or the season without rugby, and see it all in action this year. It was really great. Dr. Cottingham, do you want to go through your report?
Sure. I was tasked with managing the COVID task force and our subsequent response to that. Was definitely not an easy process, but I think what I'm really proud of is we had representation from across the league that served on that task force. We had classifiers, we had referees, we had players, we had league officials, we had team reps. We really ran the gamut there, and I hope everyone's voice was heard. So as we move forward and hopefully past this and are able to focus on other things, I think the position of first vice president can definitely look at making sure. We also reached out to all the teams that elected not to roster this year, predominantly because of COVID, although not exclusively. And I think the majority of those teams are going to be coming back. So we were down about a third of our teams last season, but the hope is that the vast majority of those will be reconstituting. So we're moving forward through this, and I think we can do a lot of really good stuff. So yeah, I want to keep it kind of short. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cottingham. Second Vice President, Daniel Curtis.
Hey, everybody. Also going to keep it short. Huge shout out to the board and the leadership team. It's a lot of work even when we're not playing rugby. Fundraising wise, I've got a grant into Nielsen for 100K, to Reeves for 15K. Got to thank our sponsors, Fusion, ABC, Melrose, Permobile, Lone Star Paralysis Foundation. They kind of show up every year. Oscar Mike, obviously, for delivering successful nationals and funding for the Low Point team, as well as our executive director. And that's kind of what I've been working on mostly as of late, as kind of one of the committee heads for the selection committee. And we'll talk about it more a bit later, but we've got a great pool of applicants, and we've done our first round of interviews, and we're just kind of excited to see what comes out of this position. Their primary job is going to be fundraising, so I will work alongside them to bring in what we can for this league and really take it to the next level as far as as far as growth and sustainability. So that's about it for me. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Daniel. Secretary Mike Klinowski.
Hey, I'm gonna follow the trend here of keeping things nice, short, and sweet. Really have to give huzzas to the folks that did the COVID task force. I mean, it was a whole group of people. We haven't seen unity and collaboration like that in the league in a long time, and it was really, really great to see. So I know there's more names than I can list, but thank you all for your service. You've done something amazing for the league, and it was a lot. So really appreciate that. Also, would like to give huzzas to the Low Point team. Steve, Rita, Sarah, and Dan, you guys are doing an amazing job. It's oh goodness, someone's getting muted. Thank you guys very much for doing something that is incredibly visible. We're going to be competing at World Games, and I think we're going to have an amazing team out there. And thank you for your dedication and your hard work there. Thanks to everyone else behind the scenes. Appreciate all the work you've done. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Mike. Our treasurer, Sid, you're up.
I apologize for being slow, but I am a low pointer. One, like everybody's already said, and I just reiterate the work that everybody did, from coaches, players, referees, classifiers, the task force, every executive committee. It was great to resume playing rugby. A lot of fun being on the court and playing and seeing all the activity, and looking forward to a new year. As you look at the financial report, sometimes when you're looking at a financial report, it does help to digest it for a little while. And so some of you, as you look over the report and in the coming days, you may, if you have any questions, or I'm always available. My contact information is on the website, and I'm always available to answer any questions, and any question that I can't answer immediately, because I don't like to just throw numbers around off the top of my head, because my head is older than it used to be. And I just don't like to do that. So it may take a little research, but any question you ask, this body, the finances are open to you, and you can ask any question, and I will do my very best to get you a expedient answer. This year was rather routine as far as financial aspects, except, as Dr. Cunningham pointing out, we did have fewer teams that registered. That does affect our finances. We had, other than that, we had semis, finals, and all the other activity. There were a few less tournaments, and the occasional hiccups from the COVID impact. But overall, financially, it was a sound year. We do have, as you look at the financial report under expenses, there's a category for the Low Point team. The Low Point team is getting closer to the actual competition in just a couple of months in Birmingham, and the expenses we've incurred so far primarily are travel related. A few other expenses related to the team, but very excited to see them in Birmingham. And as we move forward, those expenses, there's still some in the proposed budget. In the financial report, there's a balance sheet that shows you our cash balances and the other assets and liabilities that we have, and then the profit and loss statement, and then the proposed budget. So all three of those, after you've reviewed them, or even today, if you have any questions, I'm available to answer them. The Low Point team, as it moves forward, will be a few more expenses. There's a few more camps, and then the actual competition. We're very grateful to Lakeshore for all the support that they are offering, and with the days that we have left for preparation, looking forward to the Low Point team's success in the World Games. I really don't think there's anything else other than, if you look at And I know this hasn't been broached yet, but it probably will be by somebody along the way, but I will be the first one, I think, to mention it. In our budget for next year, we include the prospect of an executive director because we were in the process years ago. I don't remember, it was before my tenure. Our executive committee had gotten approval to pursue someone for that position in the future, and that time has come. The proposed budget includes the expected increase in fundraising that will come from the executive director hire, should that come to fruition, and also includes expenses related to executive director. So that's something that's kind of new and is in the works. We do have, very grateful for Oscar Mike, the pledge commitment that they have made to support the executive director position and to support the World Games. So you'll see the donation from Oscar Mike is included in the projected fundraising for the proposed budget in the coming year. So as far as I know, I think that's the only thing I would like to highlight. And like the others have said, the other executive committee members, I'm very grateful for the privilege and opportunity to serve. I consider it to be that. I love playing rugby, but I also love working with the different teams and everybody. I've never worked with anybody related to USWRA where I've had to say, man, I hope I don't ever have to work with them again. It's been a privilege. Everybody, referees and classifiers, everybody on the executive committee, the teams, I thank you for your support and being a great group to work with. So that's really all I have. If there are any questions, Mike, I'll entertain those. If there are, if not, then feel free to contact me at any point.
Thank you, Sid. You've been incredible. Our commissioner now, Bob Lopez.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to do the same as everyone else and keep it short. I mean, like everyone else has said, we're all very thankful that we're able to have a season that, for the most part, ran as we wanted it to. You know, with some hiccups, as everyone else has said. I mean, I'm thrilled. I mean, when I went out to Vegas last September for the first tournament that we had, I was just so thankful to see everybody and then see how happy everyone was to be on the court again. And this year we've done a lot of things that we've been working towards, you know, with having a new registration system and going through the bumps and headaches initially, but that's in there, which allows us to communicate with everybody directly. With having this low point team, you know, I went to the tryout in February and was very impressed by the staff and how they handled talking with the athletes, the ones that did and the ones that did not make the practice squad. And then with the board and the people we've invited to help us with starting the selection of the executive director. It's been a great team effort. I'm looking forward to us finishing that process to bring that person on board. You know, everyone's doing a great job. I think we're moving things forward, and it's thanks for everybody that's here on the call. And as I've said to people during the year, any questions or any things you have, I'm always willing to want to listen to hear what you have to say so we can hopefully make things better. And I'm thankful for being put in this position. I'm looking forward to doing more work as we go forward. And that's really all I have.
Thank you very much, Bob. Now we're going to get into the referees reports. I don't know if Joe or Karen want to present.
Give me 5 seconds to do a little housekeeping. If you guys don't mind putting on your screens, there's people watching on live stream. It'd be nice if your faces were visible, and also for the people that are presenting, just so we get a little feedback as to how things are going. If we say something amazing, we want to know about it. If we're saying something stupid, we want to know about it. So if you're capable of putting that screen up, please do. If not, understandable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Noah. I'm
transporting kids in between practices. So I pulled over here so I could throw my screen on. Once I get home, I'll turn it on for good. But kind of echoing everybody's sentiment. It's been a phenomenal year for the first one kind of out of the gate. You know, yes, we ran into some bumps, but it's been great seeing everybody and working. And the referees in the association have worked phenomenally hard from, you know, top all the way to the bottom. So thank you for all of the help with that. Karen has done a lot of work behind the scenes with the COVID committee and keeping everything on task. Bob has been doing phenomenal work trying to manage everything like that. So we thank everybody for their hard work in multiple arenas outside of just on-court officiating. With that said, we are doing some exciting things to try and continue to promote the expansion and development of our officials. We have started to work with the Team USA to have officials at their camps to be able to help out with that, as well as now the Low Point team. We're going to have some officials going to their camps to be able to help out there to prep them for the upcoming games and also give our officials some more chances to get on the court, seeing different skill levels. We also are working on trying to expand our officials' involvement internationally. So we have some upcoming opportunities in which some of our officials have applied, and that is not necessarily in our report, but it will be in the upcoming report for the next year as those things are finalized. So that's exciting. One other kind of news that we have is that we had some elections this year, and so we have some members that are rotating off the board or changing positions. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank people for their hard work. And the first of which is Bob Lopez. So he is going to be still very active and involved in the sport. He is just not on the board currently for the officials. So I really wanted to take a moment and thank him for all of the hard work that he's done as the treasurer, and he's held numerous board positions in the past, and I'm sure that he'll be back on the board in the future. But without him, we couldn't have kind of got to where we are. So I want to take a moment and be able to recognize his work at all levels and his continued work in the league. Myself, I am coming off as the chairperson. I will be working as a treasurer. I just can't currently devote the time that I need with kind of family things going on that the position I feel requires. And with that, we were very lucky that we have Marianne Duda stepping in. And I have a feeling that she is going to be able to continue to elevate us and take us to the next level where we need to be so we can support the league and make sure we are hitting everything we need to help with tournaments, player development, referee development, and give you guys the quality of officials that the league deserves. Otherwise, I don't necessarily have anything else at this time. If anybody has any questions, they can feel free to reach out to us at any point in time, and we'll be happy to work with them to answer any questions that we can.
Thank you very much, Joe. You guys have been incredible for the league and the sport, and I appreciate all the work you guys have been doing over our COVID year and this year. It was awesome, and I look forward to seeing what you guys are able to do in the future when it comes to development. Our head of classification, Amy, you're up.
All right, so over the last year, our main efforts have continued with the compliance. We did submit a report with the help of USA on the 8 steps we had, which we've met 6 of 8. And kind of highlights of those is, as you all know, we went and moved the deductions out of classification. They're now additions and competition rules. And thank you for everyone who submitted last year to make that happen and get the proposals passed. We do have international classification superseding the US classification. We did meet with several athletes, and several chose to retire from international prior to the start of the season. With that, we updated our database for registered athletes. So, I want to give a huge shout out to Cindy Ellis and Petra, because our database does date back to the early 90s. So trying to get the deductions and the international stuff in there was quite a task, and we'll continue to work on that for all athletes, not just the registered athletes. And we went cardless this year, which was another big step. And thank you for everyone for your patience in all these processes. We continued to participate on the COVID as well as the executive director committees. The other big thing we tackled was an issue came up with one of our classifiers that no longer is going to keep their therapy license active because she's retired. So we went to international with that to see what their stance was on it. So thanks to our board and Sid, especially for working with our insurance company to make sure we could replicate what international is doing. So the way the rules state is that you have to have an active PT, OT, or medical license to begin classification, but it does not say that you have to maintain that, which is a good thing because we want to keep those experienced classifiers in here as they retire from their professions. The big caveat is that they have to stay active in classification. If they stop classifying, they're not allowed to come back in without a license. So when we look at doing our new handbook, when we accept the new rules, that will be spelled out very specifically, but it helps us keep people like Ann Hart in our league, which we wanted. As far as the most exciting part for me is we got to do some tournaments. So we got one tournament in during the season and we participated in 2 postseasons. We saw 36 athletes total. Certainly that was less than what we might have, but we had all the COVID precautions in. And again, thank you guys for following everything we asked. We got to see 17 new athletes this year. We saw 11 people that were under review and we were able to get 7 people who were up for their fixed review date seen, and we completed 1 protest. We will be participating in have a classifier represented at the upcoming PVA clinic that's going to be held in early June. The other thing we're going to work on, I know, as the transitions of these new rules came in, we're going to look at, first of all, the score sheets with the referees and certainly with the board. The way it's set now and the way international will be is that when you guys change class, since there's not cards anymore, we have to initial, date, and sign the time that it becomes effective. And with the way the current score sheet is, it's definitely a little messy to get done. So we're gonna have something new for next season where we can go ahead and write everything in that we need to, and it's legible. So there's no question on when classes change. The other thing we're gonna look at doing is we will still have our classification master list, but I'm gonna work with the commissioner and the board to really figure out where we can have some list that reflects all the competition rules in it as well. So there's easy reference for tournament directors, as well as for the referees, if there's any question on how many additional points are playing. So we'll look at probably 2 different master lists on the website in the future. I did hear from a lot of people that between teams, switching between teams with COVID, not being active in the league, during the time we talked about the retirement period, they still have a desire to retire internationally. The other thing we talked about as classifiers is incorporating that new manual for this fall. So we wrote to the international committees and the compliance committees and asked for 2 things. The first one was that we could take an additional year before we put in the international rules. That was really in 2 parts. First of all, the rules went in since Tokyo, but in that time frame, there's only been 1 international tournament for them to use it. And in that tournament, we had a US classifier who is an international classifier as well. And there were some stumbling blocks, as there is with any changes. So we want to learn from international before we implement it here and have lots of stumbling blocks. So that was approved. So we will put in the USWRA manual in fall of 2023. With that question answered, I know a lot of teams have sent me people. I have a whole file of people that want to become new classifiers, which is excellent. So we'll look at trying to get some clinic dates with that. And if you guys want to hold the clinic at your upcoming tournaments next season, please let me know, and we'll try to get a whole bunch of new classifiers in. The last point is we had a lot of people ask about the retirement period again. I did submit because a lot of people were between teams. It was a COVID year, and because the athlete registration internationally is not done yet for athletes to register. Once that happens, if you're not a registered athlete, you'll fall off the international master list, which means you'll no longer have a valid international class. But since that's not done, we got granted permission to have another retirement period that will end August 1st of 2022. So if you guys are interested, or anyone on your team is interested in retiring, please contact us at our email and we'll set up a time, and then I'll go through all the rules with it like I did with everyone last year, and you'll just have to send me an official email and we'll put you on that list to be removed sometime after August. But so when you start the season, you can play with your US class. So again, the deadline is August 1st. And I'm going to put Mike on the spot here and thank him. With the new registration system, we can also reach out to everybody individually. So I know communication last year between teams and stuff was an issue for some players. So I'm going to take and summarize that, and email will go out to the entire league and individual players. So if you know somebody that's not on this call that wants to retire, please have them contact me right away at our email. And that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Amy. You've been amazing. Now, the USAWR report. I don't know if Jen Allred or Joe Delagrave want to present?
I'm doing it, Noah. Thank you all very much for the opportunity to be here. Obviously, 2021, as you saw in our report, was a huge year for the program, coming off a silver medal in the Paralympic Games in Tokyo. That silver medal propelled the U.S. back to the #1 world ranking, which is an incredible achievement. And so we, as we looked into 2022 getting kicked off, we held that selection camp in December at Lakeshore. That was the first camp under the interim leadership of our new interim head coach, Joe Delagrave, and interim assistant coach, Mike Klanowski. And team has been off to a great start this year, competed in Colombia, where they won that competition, which secured our spot at World Championships, which is in October in Denmark, the 8th to the 17th. We also will have two more international competitions between now and then. The first of which will be the Canada Cup, which is in Canada in June. And the second one is that Tri-Nations that will be here domestically that will welcome the US, Canada, and Great Britain. And that is coming off of the World Games. So a busy year for the program, but I think the most important thing for us to share is just our incredible gratitude. It was exciting reading all the reports that were sent out last night and seeing all of the great connections between the national team and the league system. And we're just, we're grateful. This would not work if there wasn't such great partnership, and we know how important it is. From the classifier standpoint, I think everyone can glean from Amy's report. I totally echo Noah's sentiment. She's been incredible. She's put in so much hard work to make that happen. So thank you to Amy and Ann and the classifiers who put in just a ton of effort. And thank you to every team who signed on to a lot of work to get us in compliance internationally. Thank you. To the referees, you heard Joe reference having the referees at USA camps. So thank you. They are coming in and spending time with us. And we hope that that's not only an opportunity for the athletes to continue to learn and grow from the expertise of the referees, but also for the referees to get some more court time. So we hope that that's a really reciprocal relationship. And finally, I want to touch on the Low Point team. That is a part of the World Games, which is being held in our backyard in Birmingham this summer. And as a part of the bid process, back many years ago, we lobbied for there to be an adapted sport on the official World Games program, which for the first time is happening. And we then turned our efforts to working with the league to really make sure that the U.S. was represented at that. And we were aware from the very beginning of what an incredible commitment it was from all of you to make that Low Point team happen, a financial commitment and effort commitment. And you did it in such an amazing way. It's so exciting. And I think Sid would echo this, to be going around town and having people talk about wheelchair rugby all the time. It's in every major sports conversation in our town. And it's, we know that it's going to do big things, but we know that it has come at a big effort from a lot of folks. I also would shout out to Bob Lopez. He has been on more meetings than he probably would have ever imagined this time last year when he signed on to this. And he's done a great job of not only navigating how to get Low Point rugby set up, but he's also done a great job at making sure that the World Games really knows what it's going to take to put on a world-class rugby tournament at that event. And so it's been just a really gratifying experience. I think you can hear from our report, we really just want to say thank you. We look forward to the years ahead and grateful for the partnership.
Thank you so much, Jen. It's been incredible. Thank you for doing everything that you do. All right, Bob, you want to represent the Hall of Fame committee?
Certainly, and thanks again, Jen, for those kind words. The Hall of Fame, it's been a busy year. We had 2 inductees from 2 years ago that couldn't get inducted when we canceled nationals. Then this year there was 3 people nominated and all 3 were voted in. Unfortunately, 2 of the people that could have been inducted weren't able to make nationals this year. So we inducted 3 people, which was Phyllis Palmer, Derek Helton, and Nick Springer, which Oscar Mike and USWRA did a wonderful job at the banquet in handling that. I was honored to oversee it, but I was so thankful and proud of how it was handled. And I think everyone did a great job in presenting. So that was this year. Going forward, the 2 people that couldn't make it this year should be inducted next year. And as always, if you know of anyone that you think should be inducted, there's a form on the website. Have questions, give me a holler. I'm happy to talk about it. It's, it's to represent the players, coaches, referees, classifiers of our league that have done tremendous jobs that have helped our league move forward. So if there's anyone you know of that you think should be in, nominate them. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Bob. And I will echo what you said. It was an incredible evening, and a very, very touching one for, I'm sure, anybody that was present. I don't know if there was a dry eye in the house. It was hard to not feel that in the room. All right, Steve Kenny, do you want to give the competition committee report?
Yeah, sure. Hey, this is Steve Kenny. I'm the chairperson for the competition committee. This year, our committee members increased from 9 to 12 as a proposal last year was passed for 3 additional members, at-large members that'll rotate on a yearly basis. So the committee is made up of myself, the commissioner, all of the racks, and then the 3 new members. This year was Justin Stark, Kip Johnson, and Steve Curley. I would like to thank all of them for their participation. Having a larger committee certainly made it easier, as well as a little bit more effective getting our votes and our rankings out. Our primary duties are monthly top 30 rankings and then seeding for nationals, which went well this year, even though it was extremely challenging due to a lot of tournaments that were canceled, that didn't happen, that would have helped clear up some of our rankings where there were a lot of teams that were close. However, come postseason, everything washed out pretty close to where the committee had thought things would go. So I certainly just want to thank all those members of the committee and remind everyone that those 3 open at-large seats will be available for next season. So it's a great way for people to get involved, as well as get their input from other teams, other members. So keep an eye out for an invite for people to put their names in the hat to join our committee next season. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Steve. I guess we're to the fun part, the proposals. Dr. Cottingham, would you like to help out here?
Sure. So the way we're going to handle this is a representative who put this forward ideally is going to, or who can speak to this proposal, will give a brief synopsis of it. Please keep that short. Hopefully everyone's read the proposals. I'll then briefly outline what the bylaws committee said were sort of the benefits or potential fallbacks to this, and just give you that perspective. Just it'll hopefully clarify the debate process and make it more streamlined. We'll briefly open for debate and discussion. Individuals can share their views and then we'll vote. So with that, we'll start with proposal A. And Bob Lopez, if you will speak to this is the author of this proposal. Just give us a brief synopsis of what you're requesting and why.
Sure. The proposal is to change the fee for postseason tournaments. Currently, it's written into the bylaws an amount of $250, which, as we all know, especially any of the teams that have hosted any tournaments, $250 isn't a lot. My proposal suggests that instead of having an amount written into the bylaws, that the amount is set by the board each year. And to add clarity is that the board will decide prior to the season starts what that fee would be. So we would decide, let's say now, what the fee would be for next year's AGM. As we all know, it's sometimes difficult to find hosts and there's a financial burden to host. So this is one way to lessen that burden by a small amount. Obviously, we don't want to have fees to be crazy amounts, like saying, well, the fee can be $1,500 or $2,000. The board would never approve something like that. It wouldn't be one person deciding, it's the board deciding. But a more nominal and more reasonable fee, like $400 or $500, as opposed to the $250 it currently is. That's all I have.
Okay, when the committee met about this, generally the benefits are that clearly it may incentivize additional postseason hosts, that this could potentially put the postseason fees more in line with what traditional tournaments cost in terms of participating, and it leaves the cost to the teams that are, it's not raising the cost on teams that aren't going to qualify for postseason. Typically, the teams that qualify for postseason who will compete in postseason have more resources that can support this. Limitations or concerns were that this doesn't give a specific number or maximum, and so it does give the board significantly more leeway. So those are sort of the benefits and the potential limitations. At this time, if you want to use the raise your hand function on the side of the screen, if you'd like to make any comments on this, we will open this for discussion. Anyone want to say anything?
I think it makes sense. Being a postseason, putting a postseason together is obviously very difficult. It's difficult to find, tournament locations anyway. And so if this will help to, solidify, more participation as part of that, I say it makes sense to ease some of the financial burden. And I think that this proposal would help with that. So that's all I have.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Actually, I initially was the one that put this proposal up several years ago because we were having such a hard time getting hosts. And, at the time, $250 was a little bit more than $250 is now. And it was giving something versus nothing. So I 100% understand, because I think it's fair, all the other leagues I'm involved with, NWBA and USA Wheelchair Soccer, and we have to all pay to go to postseason for those. So I don't see where a fee, as long as it doesn't get out of hand, would be unreasonable.
Any more discussion? If not, we will close for a vote. Okay, Michael, post a poll. Make sure you vote only if you are eligible to vote. If you are a team representative, if you are attending in some other capacity, please do not vote.
Just to let you guys know, we'll have about 60 seconds to vote. If you're having issues, please do not feel bad about saying something. But we've done this before and we tested it out and it seemed to work just fine. But please say something if there's something that's not going right. All right, here we go. 60 seconds.
Do we have to do the whole motion to vote in a second?
I apologize. You're correct. Would anyone like to make a motion to vote on this proposal?
I will motion to vote.
I'd like to second that motion.
Second.
Okay, at this time we'll go ahead and vote. If there's any further discussion, we'll vote.
All right, 5 more seconds. And it's unanimous. Vote for yes.
Okay, at this time, we'll go to proposal B. Is Louise here or a representative from the NEP Wildcats?
I'm here.
Great. If you can give a brief explanation of the proposal and your thoughts on why you sponsored it.
Sure. So my proposal is that at any level of play for USWRA athletes should be able to have secure transport, meaning that if you use a wheelchair for your mobility in everyday life, you should have an opportunity to have your chair tied down and have a seat belt when you're being transported. If you can get into a seat, that you have a seat. If this is not able to happen, I did throw in the possibility that the team hosting would say that they are not able to secure this transport so that athletes could get other transport for their safety. I came up with this, and I might get a little emotional. I didn't expect that. The night that my husband had surgery for 2 broken femurs from this past nationals. So the wording might be a little off because I was working, taking care of my kids. He was at Mass General Hospital, but all that could have been avoided. And I just feel that your safety as athletes, no matter what your level of ability is or mobility is, should be your most concern, because your lives are worth that to your family and your friends and your teammates.
Thank you. So again, this proposal is to require either, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Louise, on the wording, but it's either to require transportation security, such as strap downs or seat belts to chairs, or if not, then teams must be informed before the event that that will not be provided. Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay.
Yes. So it does. It gives teams the ability to say, we are not able to secure this transport. Here is your heads up. So if you need this and you want this, you need to get it on your own.
Thank you. As the committee discussed this, sort of the potential benefits of it is it could lower liability. It could clearly, address safety concerns, and it would sort of standardize transportation across the league, which, standardization does give a level of stability. The limitations or concerns where they would drive up prices. It may de-incentivize tournaments from providing transportation, and it may transportation is already particularly challenging, and it may make transportation more challenging, as well as just more time effective during the process. So those were the identified benefits and limitations of this proposal. So at this time, I'd like to open it up for discussion. And if you'd like to speak, we're just kind of letting it open where you can just speak accordingly.
Hey, so I just had one question on the seatbelt part of it. If we're strapping you to the ground, I mean, for the most part on buses where you have the handicap spots, it's just a blank space where you set your chair, you strap them down. What would be acceptable in terms of a seatbelt? Could we just use a gate belt and strap you to your chair?
So I actually did a quick search on seatbelt laws for wheelchairs. There are none. There are entirely more laws for children than there are for anyone in chairs, which just means if you use a chair, your life is not as important as other people's, is the way the wording is, if you ask me. So in my experience in transporting a chair for safety and not falling out and breaking anything, is that you strap down the chair and you need some sort of seatbelt in front of the chair so that it would protect you the same way you would if you were getting into a car if you were able-bodied. So when I get into a car, I sit in a chair and I pull the seatbelt over. When I have had to transport my husband since this happened, we had a tie down in the van and then a seatbelt that came across him. So you need 2 forms of secure to make sure you're not going to be thrown out. However you want to do that, I guess would be up to you.
Okay, so the gate belt would potentially be satisfactory. We have seat belts like in our bus that are regular seat belts that you can use for the chair, but they don't work very well as opposed to just using a gate belt. So
I mean, so
And unfortunately, this is where the community of disabled people is, is where we need to stand up for ourselves to make sure that everybody is safe and that you're not all going to be pushed to the side because you're in a wheelchair and nobody knows what to do. Discrimination is not something that I am unfortunately not familiar with, but I think it's a part of making it work and figuring out how to make everybody safe.
Other questions or comments?
I just, this is Rita from MedStar NRH. I just had a comment. I mean, kind of to answer your question, Bradley, I'm a rec therapist and frequently transport participants either in a hospital setting, but also tournament setting. I would, from my knowledge, that typically if there is a tie down system in a accessible van, there's going to be the seatbelt component as a typical piece of that. From any experience I've had. So that should be typical. And then what I've kind of learned is that that's kind of that additional. So frequently if a kind of rider or participant has a seatbelt on their chair, then that can be kind of that additional component of safety. And again, other people may know other kind of
I'll jump in too.
Okay, but that, the seatbelt on the chair can provide that seatbelt aspect, because then the wheelchair itself is secured to the vehicle in the sense of like a car seat. But then there's typically that additional kind of extra seatbelt. So that's my knowledge of it. But then I guess my question just from the proposal is, so it's not stating that every player is required, or that tournament hosts are required to do tie downs. It's just that the option is there. Is that correct?
Yes. So if you choose to if you know that you're going to be on a bus and you will not have the opportunity to have a tie down, you may choose to rent a car per your choice.
Okay. Rita, I can just jump in as well. I don't know if my internet's bad. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. And Mike and Amy, or whoever does seating clinic as well, feel free to jump in. Typically when I did ped seating clinic, there had to legally be tie downs and then like transit tie downs on the frame of the chair that were crash tested. And then you could not use a gate legally for pediatrics. You could not use a gate belt or any seat belt that's attached to the chair. It had to be a crash tested belt that was attached to the bus. So like a gate belt is still deemed unsafe. So the real safety protocol would be exactly transit tie downs and then secured to the bus or whatever transportation vehicle.
Yeah, and Ryan, that's very correct, especially in pediatrics more than adults. Extensive research have been done about the injuries from seatbelts, even in regular cars, if the kids are too small to put in on injuries that have called spinal cord and significant abdominal injuries in children. So it did have to be something that comes across the shoulders. As Louise mentioned, it's not stated, but I think it's something to think about if you want to be secured, is if you do get an accident, all you have is that lap belt, all the force goes through there into the lower spine of the abdominal cavity, which is where a lot of organs are.
Exactly. I think they found that a gate belt was actually less safe than nothing almost, because it was almost cut you in half. So it's very unsafe.
And I'll agree with what you said. I've worked in many areas of the country where we have used tie downs and things. The buses that come accommodated for tie downs also has the strap that comes over and hooks in and is a cross shoulder strap.
Yeah, for sure. That's just my 2 cents. It does add some logistics, but I just wouldn't want anybody to get hurt tying themselves down with a gate belt or something like that.
And I feel like we've gotten a good understanding of the mechanics of this. Any comments on the pro or con of actually supporting or not supporting this before we close for vote?
This is Nick from Michigan. I have some concerns about it. Typically, I'm a low pointer. I typically, like on buses and things like that, I refuse. I almost outright refuse to get tied down because I feel like I'm less safe, because I'm not, if I can sit sideways in the bus, then I can handle most acceleration or stopping, and I'm not going to fall out of the chair. And I am not, most of us, I'd say 98% of us aren't tied to our chair through a seatbelt. So none of us are wearing seatbelts. And so that's one concern I have. That's not a major one. I would say the the burden to the host is going to be difficult. But I guess you've put a parameter in there that says they can state, they can just notify people. People don't have to come. My other concern is that there isn't a wording in there that says you can refuse it. Like if I got in a bus and we're offering me a seatbelt, I would say no. I would just position myself sideways and hang into somebody or a bar or something like that. There really isn't wording in there that says whether we can refuse that. And I know it's a huge amount of effort to get that many chairs tied down. I went to a tournament years ago in Canada, and they forced it because their local regulations did require in Quebec that everybody had to be tied down. But I mean, you're talking to get 12 wheelchairs tied down effectively in a bus is quite an undertaking. It's probably 45 minutes. So I always tried to be the last one on the bus so I could be the first one off. Now I've given you my secrets and I'll have to rent a vehicle. But yeah, it is a lot of effort, especially if you're forcing it. I think there's a lot of people that have a lot more function than I am, and they would be able to hop on the bus and prefer not to be tied down. So I guess I'd love to see wording that states that it's not forced. I do agree that it's nice to have it as an option, or at least notified ahead of time. So what I'm proposing is maybe a little bit of a wording change, but that's really up to you.
So the wording actually is, it doesn't state that anyone has to use it. It just said it has to be provided. So there's nothing that says everyone has to be tied down. It needs to be an option, period. And if you don't have that, you need to tell your athletes ahead of time. I do want to tell you what happened on the bus at Nationals is that there were probably 10 chairs on that bus, all sitting sideways. My husband is a 1. He's been paralyzed for 20 years. The bus stopped short at a red light. She had a yellow light, so she stopped short. The person who was sitting in front of my husband, her entire chair went flying. He toppled over sideways. So his head and shoulder hit the floor with his body, his legs, his pelvis in the chair, and he broke both femurs. So he's a 0.5 who's been doing this for 20 years. Never in a million years will you think that you're going to topple over like that. He did. He missed work. I missed work. My kids are now lifting. It's a life-changing event that doesn't happen until it happens. And it's always your choice. And it's your choice in the wording that I put in there. But I think you're doing yourselves a huge disservice if you don't at least look at it and offer someone the ability to be safe, especially competing at a national level. You're national Olympic level athletes, some of these people. It's a disservice to not give them safety.
Other comments pro or against this before we close for vote?
I just had a quick comment. I think that this has been seen from both perspectives. I know this is not something new, at least in the programs I've worked in, that this has come up just from especially being now in a hospital-based sports program. Risk management is a huge component. And I think a lot of times if our higher ups kind of knew what happened at tournaments on our name to this degree, that sometimes there would be big questions about that. And so I don't think that this is unreasonable to bring up. But then also the idea of these are adults, you can make your own choice. But then where's that liability? Where's that question? So I think that is a, big concerning question mark, but I think to be able to have the option, and typically any accessible vehicle that people would be transporting and likely would have some sort of this setup in place. Otherwise, people aren't transporting people in box trucks, it has to have some, it has an accessibility feature. So I think from a risk management standpoint, these questions have already been raised. And so to have it be involved in the league in some capacity, I think does make some sense.
Thank you. At this time, would anyone like to make a motion to vote on this amendment?
Motion to vote.
Second, okay. This time we will vote.
As before, you guys have 60 seconds. During the next proposal, we'll have 30 seconds to vote. We're doing pretty good today, guys. Thank you. Closing out the voting. And the proposal passed. There we go.
Okay, Nick, you are up for proposal C.
Thank you. Basically, the gist of this proposal is that currently the top, for postseason, the top 8 teams proceed to nationals without going to semifinals. The next 8 get to pick their location. So the next, whatever that is, so 9 through 16 get to choose, like I want to go east or I want to go west. Currently, the next 8 don't get a choice, and it's chosen by the commissioner. My proposal states that they all the teams get a choice of where they go. I think it should be up to the team to decide. This year we would have chosen because our international player was not able. He was in Colombia, was not able to go to one of the tournaments and would have been able to go to the other. So that was a huge impact on our team as far as for postseason. And also, I mean, the last time we chose, when it was Tampa and Portland, obviously for Michigan, Tampa's a lot closer, or where I think it was Tampa, Florida. But we chose Portland, and it was more competitive, and it was that was really it. We felt like we had a better chance to win up there. So I think there are times that teams will choose something other than geography to determine where they're going to go for postseason. And I don't see any reason. I don't remember why this came about, why it was, the top 8 teams got to choose, the next didn't. But I think there'd be some, I think it should be up to every team. And it'd still go in order. If you're ranked higher than the next team, you get to pick your location. If you're ranked lower, then you get to pick. When we had this discussion, I talked to Bob Lopez about this because I was hoping that there would be some chance we could go to the other location. And, you can correct me if you're wrong, Bob, but I think most of your decision on which team went where was mostly geography. And I think as a team, we'll choose geography, we'll choose the time frame, we'll choose the, the cost of airfare, we'll choose the weekend, things like that. So I guess I'd like to have every team that makes it to nationals to be able to, or actually makes it to semis, to be able to choose their location. So that's the gist.
Just one comment. I mean, for the most part, I agree with what you said is what we talked about. Part of the other reason I chose teams the way I did was to have the maximum number of teams go to postseason. And there's some other teams that if Grand Rapids went to the Eastern semis, then I knew they wouldn't be able to go to the Western. So it was also to try to maximize the number of teams. But in addition, as we talked about, I'm fine with this proposal if it goes through, that the teams select through all 16 slots, or it stays as it is. Either way is fine with me. It's really up to the membership to decide what they prefer, and I'm okay with either one.
Very little to add in terms of what bylaws committee discussed in terms of this. It's plausible that this could drive up prices for lower ranked teams if, again, teams were to sort of move into their semifinal and they would have to then relocate. So there's plausibility there. Otherwise, there's not really a lot of pushback against it. It does give more autonomy to teams as they choose. At this time, I'd like to open it for discussion.
I would just have a question for Nick. If you're choosing for like a competitive reason, would there in your mind be a process to see as teams select, like what you know what I mean? Like would it go in order of 9 through 16?
That's what it currently does. Yeah, it currently goes in order. If you're ranked top, you get first choice. Currently goes 1 through 8 of the ones going, and then currently 9 from 9 on. Bob chooses. So instead 9 would get to pick. So at this point, if I was the 9th team and I saw there was 5 teams out east and 4 teams, I guess 3 teams out east, out west, I could look at those numbers and see where I want to go. Right now, I don't have an option. So yes, you would just go in order.
Okay, so it would be made public in order.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Used to be when you did that, you knew when you got on a call, you knew, all right, who's in the east and who's in the west. You knew that going into the call, and then you could choose where you want to go based on that. You had some time, and then you chose, and that's how the top 8 go. They go in order.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any additional discussion, questions, comments?
I have a question. Forgive my ignorance as I'm fairly new to the sport, but can you guys explain why there's even the option of the top 8 choosing? As far as I know, no other sport does this.
It incentivizes teams who are ranked, who have a more successful season during the regular season, to select based on cost or competition, and allows for a more competitive playing field. It also minimizes cost, right? If you were to strictly locate teams based on rankings, and some teams financially would find that untenable. If you were like, hey, I'm in Portland and I want to go to the Seattle event, but instead now I have to go to Philadelphia. I'm the highest ranked team. That's a financial burden. So we tried to potentially lower that financial burden for teams.
And I'll add something. I believe what Nick's asking for, that is how this was initially written. And Steve Curley, I believe you wrote the proposal, but I thought that all teams would get to choose all the way down till you got to the bottom, not just the top 8.
Yeah, I don't recall. I did write the proposal, and it does seem like that I recall each team being able to choose, but somewhere along the way, I don't know if they got changed or whatnot. So,
yeah, because I thought each team would be get the option up until one tournament filled up, and then the other teams would be told where they were able to go, because, well, there no longer was a choice to be made.
Yeah, this is Bob. From what I understand from talking with Dave mentioned, is that the way it was originally, but then it changed, and I'm not sure why. And the first year we went by how it changed was for the 2020 postseason. And like I said before, either way is fine with me. There's pros and cons to both. Either way is fine.
I was one of the hosts of the first East semifinal, and I will just say that I think the advantage to geographically looking at this is also in consideration of the hosts. So upon, agreeing to host, you don't know where teams are coming from and are potentially looking at transporting such a large amount, a variable amount. And so I think to be able to consider serving hosts and having additional teams who may not require transportation or have to fly in is a benefit to both the teams attending and also the host, which I do think that the team itself would probably consider. But I know that that is something that could benefit hosts as well as teams attending.
To reply to that, I agree that there may be some difference in that, but I would think it'd be minimal. I mean, you got to think of, how many hosts are in a location where there's going to be a lot of people driving in versus, a lot of people are flying. I don't know how many people were able to drive into Chicago versus fly, things like that. I don't think that's going to be a significant difference, but I agree that's going to be an additional cost. But I don't know that it's going to necessarily force people. I think for the most part, most people are, when they make that choice, they are going to choose the geographically close location. They're going to choose the one that makes the most sense. There's just going to be unusual circumstances like we had, where we have an international player that can't come that weekend, and it's going to destroy our chances for nationals, or somebody else having some other instance. I think for the most part, they're going to choose the close one. If any other instance, we would obviously choose Chicago. That's driving distance for us. So that would be, I agree, a little extra burden on a host, but probably not significant, I wouldn't think.
Any other comments?
I just have one quick comment question. So this kind of goes for the teams that might not have the first choice. Would there be an exception, like an extreme exception, if, like, let's say it's in Philly again, and 8 teams choose Philly before us, and it's a 2-hour drive, and instead of, that's tough, because we're probably not going to have the first 8 picks just based on potential rosters and things for next year. But So I just think that, is there any possibility of adding to the language that you could have veto or something of that nature? Because that's pretty tough to pay for 6 round trip tickets when it's a 2-hour drive. So that's just my comment.
As it's worded, there's not a mechanism for that. If you're requesting a friendly amendment, you can request that.
Yeah, no, I know. I just thought of it now. But
Yeah, I mean, I can see that happening, but I also see, once again, I would think that teams would choose the closer location than they would farther for the most part. I mean, that's most of the reason most of us choose which tournament we're going to is the close one. So, but potentially that could happen. I mean, certainly this year we had one section that we're having a hard time filling and the other one not. You know, there would be some of that, but I still think, you know, for the fairness of the teams going, I think, you know, all teams should get to choose where they go, what location.
Is there a motion to vote?
Real quick, Mike, before doing a vote, I had one comment. I think one of the issues with a lot of teams and just being a host as well, that might help alleviate some of these situations like what Nick faced, is if we can figure out where the postseason hosts are going to be ahead of time. Like, I don't think we give ourselves enough of a timeline. We don't know who's hosting postseason until it's almost the last minute, and then teams are scrambling to figure out, you know, who they can field, whether they can field their full team at this tournament or at another tournament. And there's just not enough time between the end of postseason and which tournament host you're going to and who's even been asked to host. So if we can figure out ways a league to kind of give ourselves more time picking tournament hosts for postseason and even picking down to, you know, our last seedings, between the time of the last seedings and
Hey, Tony, can you
Your sound's cutting out a lot. I'm gonna try to,
who's gonna go to
right, I mean, it's really hard to hear you. Your connection's kind of bad. Basically what Tony was saying is that he would like the league to identify the postseason hosts much sooner, and that might make the process significantly easier. I think that's absolutely true. However, sort of the deadline, because you can't actually choose which section you're going to until a certain cutoff date, which likely wouldn't be that much different than before. But regardless, he's right that the league does that, but it may not be most relevant to this proposal. But I think that's a great point. Any other discussion before we?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, to Tony's point, ideally we know the hosts at the beginning of the season. You know, when we had our board meeting the other night, we talked about trying to set the date for next year's nationals. I already have one host for one of the semifinals. Another team has just reached out to me about the second semifinal. So ideally, I'm going to have the hosts when the season starts with dates and stuff, which, to Tony's point, is an excellent point. The sooner we know, we can publish that for all the teams. That helps them making that decision and planning. But to like you said, Mike, until we do the selection, there's not a ton of time from the selection time to when the tournaments are. So, you know, it's a dilemma.
This is probably a little maybe forward thinking, not for this coming up season, but one of the things that the executive director is supposed to be raising money for in their buckets is postseason support. If that was the case, I'm just throwing this out there because I feel like, in fairness, it would be nice if there was more of a sectional host meeting, or you know, separated by almost East and West Coast. It would help alleviate a lot of this, I'm sure, and it would be nice to say that in advance. This is where, you know, if, for instance, the entire league was supporting, we got somewhere close to the West Coast, somewhere close to the East Coast.
Thank you. Other comments? Do we have a motion to vote at this time?
Motion to vote.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any objections? All right, this time we'll be voting. Thank you.
"30 seconds this time, folks." And the proposal passes.
Okay. Chris Cook, you are up with proposal D on a one-arm drive.
Hey guys, thanks very much. So this one-arm drive device is specific to a player on our team, Kyle Chaboya, who has been playing now about 5+ years, and he's got CP. And my understanding is that this has come up in discussion before. We kind of looked at that and reworded it. We would like to make this for low pointers 1.0 and below. Kyle is currently a 0.5. He pushes with one arm. And so essentially what he does is, I don't know how many of you saw the video that was attached to this, but it's a short video and it shows him pushing and then crossing his body with the same arm and pushing the other wheel, and then back and forth and back and forth. The device that we're proposing here would allow him to push on one wheel and propel his chair more evenly, just using one arm, because his other arm is clenched at the elbow and at the wrist, and he's really unable to use it. He realizes that by using this, his classification might be bumped up, and that's just fine. We just want to give him the opportunity to play ball at his most efficient ability, and this device would do so. And it's not inexpensive. My understanding is these things cost somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000. So we don't think it's going to be something everybody's going to jump on board with. However, there are some people out there that this could benefit, and we're hoping that you guys will see this as an opportunity for a low point player to maximize his ability.
I'm going to show the video.
That's Kyle right in the middle of a screen.
My apologies.
Technology. So you see he's reaching across his body to get where he needs to get, and then to hold a pick as well. And frankly, I don't know how many people this is going to benefit. I'm guessing there's several folks out there with a similar function limitation or disability. I don't really like to use that word, but this is something we hope will help many people. And Kyle is really wanting this to happen so he can maximize his game and play.
Sorry, the bylaws committee met and discussed the benefits and merits of this, as well as any concerns. Some of those were addressed in revisions to this proposal. Classification levels that wasn't utilized by players maybe who were more physically dominant. The reclassification consideration, the fact that it's only a 1-year modification. So basically, this is a 1-year trial to see how it works. Benefits of this is clearly that it allows for greater participation and for athletes who maybe are able to physically participate, and that this is being used in some other countries and some other leagues. One-arm chairs are being allowed. Concerns with this were that it is not allowed by the IWRF, Additionally, that you could be opening up a Pandora's box of individuals who have significantly more function and have more hemiphoresis and a really dominant side, not dominant side. The classification line does clarify that a bit with not being above a 1.0 in classification eligible to utilize this technology. So those were sort of the identified benefits and considerations. At this time, we'd like to open this for discussion.
I got something to say right off the bat. I mean, I understand the sport of wheelchair rugby has been exclusive, but it's made changes in order to allow more people to play the game. You know, whether it's ball holders or just the design of the chair in general. I think that here's a guy that just wants to compete, just wants to go down the line and shake hands and just participate in our sport. And it's not like we're letting a 3.5 out there doing this. We're letting someone with less function do this. And I think that it just is the right thing to give this guy a chance to participate in our sport.
And one more thing, if I can add, I neglected to mention, he has a great deal of spasticity. And when he reaches across like that, each way going back and forth, the spasticity turns into pain. And that's been an issue for him as well.
I will just comment on a couple things. I know there's several athletes that this would benefit that we've seen throughout the years. I've come up with many devices to go on their elbow, to push with their elbow on that side instead of cross push. Certainly you already addressed he needs to be seen in the chair he's going to play in. We certainly will note that on the classification form, but will not be classification that polices. If he got classified in the one-arm drive chair and decides not to play in it or vice versa. So that'll have to be among athletes that police that to make sure that everyone's being upfront. And then the 1.0 would be the classification he would, when you say it's a 1.0 or lower, that's after he's been classed in that chair, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
He's a 0.5 now, playing in a regular chair. He's really unable to push with that other elbow. So that's why he's crossing back and forth. But once he gets the second chair, he's going with that because that's good, was going to maximize his ability.
I want to clarify that question because I want to make sure we're on the same page. I know that when we looked at this, I think our understanding was that only individuals who were pre-classification 1.0 or lower were eligible, but we don't actually know how this will impact his classification. So you may want to say that his pre-classification, there must be an individual, because again, we can't write this just for him, right? In theory, this would be now eligible for anyone who applied for next season. So would be eligible, you basically have to be 1.0 or lower pre-classification to be eligible to use a one-arm drive, would be my understanding, because we don't really know what this individual's classification may be post-classification. Does that seem appropriate? And Amy, do you have any thoughts or concerns on that?
I mean, if that's how you guys want to do it, we'll support it. It just puts a lot more work on us because it means we're classifying the same athlete twice. Where the expectation and classification is that you show up in the equipment that you play or equipment that's similar to how you play. But we can work with it. The other thing I had on my notes is if you guys are going to put this in, please let us know at the beginning of the season when you register if your athletes are going to use this so we can prioritize getting them seen.
Points of discussion, comments?
I really quickly, guys, I think too that just on the standpoint from the rules, I know that we said that it does go against the WWR rules, which are the rules that we're operating under. And so I know that potentially maybe not allowing it in postseason to clean that up, because currently we have disqualified chairs for not having adhered to the rules with the dual back casters and things along that nature. So it just kind of opens that up a little bit too if considerations are there. I'm completely in agreement that this gentleman should be allowed to play and we should find the most functional way for him to be able to play. But in terms of staying with some of the rules, at least for postseason and what has been previously sent, I think some consideration should be given.
Joe, are you making a request for friendly amendment to make an additional comment that this can't be used in postseason? Is that what you're asking?
I guess that would be what I'm asking, yes.
Chris, would you consider that friendly amendment?
Yeah, that sounds great. We just want to Well, we want to make it as easy as possible on classification and the rules committee, but in the effort of making this happen, yeah, whatever seems reasonable. Yes.
Okay, so there's a friendly amendment and an accepting of that friendly amendment that this chair will not be eligible for postseason. So as you can vote, then
Wait, before you go on, can you explain that? Why would that be an issue if he's played in the chair all year long?
Joe?
Just with the way that the rules are stated, there's no mechanical advantage allowed per the WWR rules. And so a one-arm drive falls under that mechanical advantage as explained. Yep.
I see. And so again, this is going to be looked at for 1 year and be talked about again at next year's AGM if it passes. Is that how that works?
If you re-sponsor it or someone does.
Okay. Okay, all good.
So you accept that amendment then, or not?
Yes.
Okay. So again, there's an amendment that an additional stipulation is these chairs will not be eligible during postseason for next season. Any additional discussion before we vote?
I had a question, Chris. Do you have this chair exists now? Do you have pictures of how that would,
Yes and no. Here's what I know about it. Phil Melrose in California has, and via New Zealand, has talked with Kyle and his parents about building this chair. Do they have one now for rugby? No, they don't. So it's a prototype.
Thanks. Just curious.
Seen
really
this type
quick.
of drive for other sports chairs. And yeah, I think it would work. The only thing, I'm just afraid he's going to spend all this money, and I don't think it's going to be able to withstand the sport. Just the way that it's designed, it's going to take 1 or 2 hits, and it's not going to be functional anymore.
Well, here's the good news on that. No offense, Kyle, but he's never going to be an elite player. And also, when he's on the court, his job is to pick and defend. And so he's not a ball handler at all. Occasionally he can inbound. But the bottom line is that he wants to play at his maximum ability, and he's willing to spend the money. And so it's on him.
And I do think too, to throw this in there, I have spoke with some other officials, and some of these chairs are being utilized in other countries around the world. There's not a lot of them, but they have allowed that. Yeah, that was what I was told. Yep.
Where can we see video?
I wish that I had video. I do know that I believe there was one that was in Canada, and I think there was one in Europe. But unfortunately, I don't have anything around the video for that.
Yeah, this is Bob. I spoke to Kyle's dad at Nationals, and I also spoke to the representative from Melrose. They ordered the chair. The Melrose rep told me that they've built the chair ready. It's being used in Europe. So, if he's willing to spend the money, I think we should allow it for the 1 year trial.
I agree.
And
I
then-
know our program in Boise.
And then everyone will agree not to hit him on that
program-
side, right? Just kidding.
Hey, our program in Boise is looking into getting one of these as well. We've got CAF Idaho is building a new facility in 2 years here. That's going to be a really good facility, and they're looking to buy a bunch of new rugby chairs. And we've got 3 athletes in our area that need a one-arm assist rugby chair. These guys have all come out to practice. They push just like Kyle. All of them have CP, and some of them wouldn't class into the 1.0 and lower. And I think it would be kind of unfair to just label that to only a low pointer when a guy that has full function in one arm but is paralyzed and would have to use that cross arm pushing the same way. I don't see why they wouldn't be able to use it as well. But like I said, our program's looking into purchasing one of these as well.
I just want to add to what Spencer was talking and what Joe Bo and Giovanni were saying. It's a mechanical advantage, and kind of agreeing with what Spencer said. How can you limit that to only 1.0s or below? Because if you're giving that advantage, isn't that kind of a discrepancy, or just
when
not
when
keeping it
when the
across the
bylaws
board?
committee, and again, we have no dog in this fight. When the bylaws committee met on this, the initial concern that came to everyone's attention was, could this be utilized by a triple amputee, right? And that was not the intention of this proposal, as we understood, that was put forward by Chris. So there was an understanding that they wanted to have ideally hemiplegic individuals who really had virtually no function on that other side. In most cases, that's going to be someone who's classed on the lower end of the spectrum, but not exclusively. And again, if we want to modify that, anyone can recommend a friendly amendment, and Chris can consider that if he so chooses. So if anyone's requesting a friendly amendment, this would be the time to do it.
So Mike, going along with that, my thought is they're getting classed in that separate chair, and their classification would be as if, if he was a 0.5, now he's a 1. So it gets basically doubled, right? So that person who is classed as a 2 with that only one arm, now he can play, or if he got classed in the other chair, now he'd be 4.0. So he couldn't play in that chair because of classification. So you get classed in that, but if you get classed out, then you have to use the other chair.
Presumably.
And that's my thoughts on it in order to limit that.
So and I do think too, I'm sorry to interrupt, Chris. I do think though, that if we limit it to regular season play only and not postseason, I don't necessarily see it getting abused then, because it won't have any effects for somebody to win a national championship. And the competition committee can take that all into effect when they are seeding that player will then be playing in a different chair if they happen to have such a major outcome on the game.
Okay, so just to reiterate, this is the reason we put 1.0 or low pointers into the wording, is because the anticipation was, hey, some people might try to abuse this thing and become, an all-world ball handler now that they've got the ability of pushing their chair with one arm. What we want to avoid here is, what's the word I want, is exclusion. No, we would like to include everybody, but I thought that by putting in there the language 1.0 and below, there wouldn't be as much opportunity for abuse. And because it's a one-year trial, we could take a look at that and see how it all worked out, and then revisit this next year.
I would say from a classification standpoint, I would like to see what it looks like. I would also say let's do it on a trial basis without it being in postseason. I think we're okay. And if we seriously throughout the season want to extend it for the higher classes, which there is a potential for that, with a lot of people that are asymmetrical, have the asymmetric push, asymmetrical ball skills, if it changes any of that. But before we make it part of the league, and if that's what we want to do other than a one-year trial, and if we want it available in postseason, we need to go back to the International Compliance Committee, because again, we can't make special rules in classification or competition. We can make it in competition, but not in classification. So I need to talk to them about how classification may be affected with a non-standardized chair internationally that's used internationally, so that we stay in compliance, because I really don't want to have to go through compliance issues like we went through this last year and a half.
I just want to say too, I feel like depending on the mechanics of this drive, it sounds like it has to be a gear system. And I feel like there's a lot to go into that. Like for instance, if it's supposed to be an equal distribution of power on both sides, somebody like me who's a 1.5 who has tricep on my left and not on my right, I would love to use something like that. I would never do it, but that's another reason why I think we should keep it at 1.0 or below. I do see there being a lot of complications as you go up, but even just changing up a gear, 1 or 2 teeth on a gear could give you significantly more power behind a push with one arm.
So how many of you have used a one-arm drive before? Have you seen it been used before?
I've seen it been used.
It's because it rarely works for anyone to be a functional tool. Like if you're using it on a day chair, I will tell you on one hand how many times I've even thought about recommending a one-arm drive chair. It is not this cure-all, solve-all, everything. It is not going to make Kyle a super stud out there, although I think he's a super stud already. Here's the thing. It's going to give him the chance to participate in our sport. That's all it is. And I think we really need to give this a shot, see what's sticking, see what doesn't. The only way we find out is if we give this a shot. If we don't give it a shot, we'll never know. I think this kid deserves a shot.
Can I make a motion to vote?
I second that. I mean, the $5,000 is going to deter anyone from putting it on unless you really need it. The kid's been trying for like 3 or 4 years. I mean, we got to include it. I mean, it's not to make him better, it's so he can play.
We have a second. Do we have any concerns? Okay, this time let's vote.
Here we go. We got 30 seconds coming at you. We'll give you guys an extra 15 seconds. Some people are thinking really, really hard. And we did have some abstentions there. So we're going to wrap this up. Proposal passed.
Hey, Keith Noella, you're up with postseason realignment.
Postseason realignment. Not the playing game, right? The other one?
That's correct.
Okay. So here's an idea I had that I ran through a couple people and we thought it was worth giving a shot. So I'll try to do my best to explain it. Hopefully you've read about it. It would essentially create a third division that participates at nationals, and there would essentially be 6 teams in each division. So the thought process of this is that it makes more parity, and you actually play teams that are closer to your ability, because I think it's fair to say that nobody wants to be the 8th team in Division 1. Nobody wants to be the 8th team in Division 2. So essentially, you would have 6 teams in Division 1, 6 teams in Division 2, and 6 teams in Division 3 that would all play each other. And they chose the format of a round robin to eliminate the crossover and the possibility of having a bad crossover matchup, so that your true best teams end up playing for 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th and 6th. That is it pretty much in a nutshell. There will still be a national semifinals. Your top 6 teams would automatically go to D1, and your 7th and 8th team would automatically go to Division 2. And then your top 2 finishers at each semifinals would round out your Division 2 pool, and it would actually grow the national tournament by 2 additional teams. So hopefully I was pretty clear. If anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them. And I'll also say that we were just going to do this for a short period of time to test it, to see if we wanted to continue doing it in the future. I believe we came up with 2 years. I think is what we wrote in the proposal.
In terms of the bylaws committee, the most obvious benefits are that you are going to have divisions that are likely to be more competitive, that you are going to add 2 more teams to nationals, And so that sort of incentivizes more teams to make a run at nationals who might otherwise not qualify. And, that competitive level, and also just sort of like the crossover model doesn't always provide, there's some limitations to that in terms of advancing. The limitations to this were that it does add more games to nationals. How many games does it keep? 17 or something?
I don't have it in front of me, to be honest. I'm in a car, so
okay.
Whatever we wrote it.
It adds 14 games.
Adds 14 games to nationals. It could require, so every team's going to have to play 6 games under this model, which means either A, you're going to have 3 games on a day, or B, you're going to have 1 game on the Thursday or whatever you elect to have as your first day of the tournament. So there is like more rugby. Officials and classifiers noted that it may be more of a strain on them to find more officials to be able to manage that, to just manage that classification need. Those are considerations. However, and I think there's a real desire to keep all of rugby nationals together. You could plausibly, under this model, spin off a Division 1 or a Division 3 into a second or different location, and you could do that, allowing for less strain on the hosts. When I spoke to previous hosts, and we're previous hosts, adding 2 more teams once you're doing an event of this scale on the host is not, it's already such a demanding event. It doesn't add that much more stress. It seemed to be was the tenor of the room. However, the court needs, like, not every facility has courts to address that, and then there'll be more pressure on the referees to make sure that they have enough quality referees to make the event go forward. So those are the only limitations to it. This is time we'll open it up for discussion and comment.
Can I add to that? I mean, originally when we wrote it, the preferable format was 2 games each day, and that we also set a timeline in there for the format to be shared with the group. I think it was the first national semifinal. That way teams could appropriately prepare for transportation and that sort of stuff.
And so if it were 2 games a day, then it basically does mean that your nationals would be 1 day longer.
And I will just add to that, the way it's written right now is we start classification the night before competition starts. So we usually start classification on Thursday night. It means we would start competition on Wednesday night, or we'd start classification on Wednesday night, which means the teams would have expected to be there Wednesday afternoon. And that, the host would have to certainly feed us and put us up for an extra night as far as extra cost. So if you have players that are going to be at nationals and they're up for classification, you guys will need to be in on Wednesday if there's Thursday games.
Discussion or comment?
I like to recommend that we kind of formalize a 2-3-1 format in order to keep the tournament, 3-day format.
There's a request, Keith, to so the way it's currently written, Steve, is that the host can make that determination. You're requesting a friendly amendment that it's a 2-3-1 model, so 3 games in a day. Keith, are you amenable to that, or do you prefer not to accept that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with it. The reason I left it up to the tournament host was because of the availability of the gym and what they might be able to have access to. And as a tournament director, sometimes you're told when you have the availability. So that's why I left the flexibility. But if you think it'd be better if we make it more concrete, that's fine too.
I think it would. And also I'm concerned about a 2-game Sunday, potentially. We're already scrambling to try to get to the airport. I just feel like this is going to put more strain on players, tournament host, transportation, logistics, so forth. So anyway, that's my recommendation.
That's fine.
Okay, so we have a friendly amendment that the model will be a 2-3-1 model, keeping nationals, having 3 games on the Saturday for each team, and then keeping the schedule otherwise consistent. Other discussions, points of comment?
Yeah, I echo Steve's comments as far as the schedule. There also needs to be a stipulation about time in between games so that there's not back-to-back games. But above that, I mean, my concern is that, for the sake of just kind of the sport and how it looks, when you have pool play instead of, our normal format, you're going to have tiebreaker situations in games, and you're going to have teams that are 2 courts going at the same time, where both those games will determine final seeding as far as placement games and stuff. And I don't know that it's best for the sport to have multiple tiebreakers determining who's playing for national champions and whatnot. So that's kind of my concern, just overall, of doing a 6-team pools instead of doing our normal format that we're used to, all season.
Justin, we put in there was, I think, at least an hour between each game. There were things we put in there to protect from back-to-back sort of scenarios.
That should actually be in there, and there that was discussed. I apologize if that's not there, not visible, but one of the requests was no either back-to-back games or an hour between games on the day that you have 3 games. So that is a friendly amendment which was accepted. Other questions and comments?
I've got something to add, and this just kind of going off of Steve's. Steve's recommended a 2-3-1 format. I don't think we need to pigeonhole ourselves in the 2-3-1. That way some teams could play 3 Friday, some could play 3 Saturday. We just need to lift the maximum of 2 games rule for postseason that we currently have in place. Because trying to put in 3 games for 18 teams in one day, that's a really long day. To whereas the host could stagger some of those extra games Friday and some Saturday.
So there's a friendly request, Keith, to say that the teams will play either 3 games Friday or Saturday. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, can we write it so that there's protection that there's only 1 game on Sunday to make sure people are able to get out and get to the airport?
Okay, so just to confirm, our requests are no more than 3 games in a day and no more than 1 game on Sunday.
That's probably the way to go.
Okay. And you accept that, correct, Keith?
I'm good with it, Steve. You good?
I'm good. Yes.
Other points of discussion or comment?
Yeah, Jason Regier here. A couple comments. I think the 3 divisions actually fits the teams and competitions level a little better. I think you looked at this, Mike Cunningham, before. I agree with that. Having this many games, being a nationals, I disagree with the format on the sense this is, you could be playing 3 games, which would be your crossover game, 3rd game, most important game to get to a final. And that's a lot of games at that level. You see it internationally where they spread out games. To give you a comparison, Canada Cup this year will have 7 teams, 6 games each, and that's over 4 days. The only way that I would be in favor of a format of this 6-6-6 is adding an extra day. And I think that is too big of an ask of classifiers hosting everybody else right now. I like it from a competition standpoint, but I think trying to cram it in really dilutes what should be your best tournament.
Are there additional questions or comments?
I think Jason brings up a good point. But I think from a competition standpoint, you're going to get better games. You're going to get, games that are going to attract more, people watching and just better overall competition. And, I guess the counter to potentially, playing 3 games and, an important game that could determine, whether you make it to the championship on a short break. I would just say that's kind of why you condition and what you prepare for at a nationals type tournament. You should be ready for that if you know that that's what you're up against. So I'll just leave it at that.
I will say if this passes too, I know I talked to Mike Cottingham and I talked to Keith about it, is it may be a request from us then with the additional teams being added, even though it doesn't seem like a lot to you guys, it's a lot for us when we pull every athlete from the database and the number of athletes being seen, we may request a third panel at nationals.
Other discussions? What's coming?
And this is Ryan with WASA. I think you need to remove the part with the tournament host automatically qualifying. I think if they can't make it in through the semifinals, they shouldn't be allowed to get that last spot in D3.
There's an independent question of that in a later proposal. So you probably could, if you want to remove that, Keith, just to make this a little bit simpler, you could do that. And then if the other passes, it would probably then impact this. So are you okay with removing that out of this particular proposal, Keith, just as a friendly amendment?
Yes, it was necessary.
Okay. So just to confirm, there's language in here that says that the host automatically qualifies. That is not, that is now currently being removed. But there's a proposal later that we'll discuss that. So if you're in support of that, you'll have an opportunity to vote on that later. Any additional discussion before we vote?
Can I make a motion to vote, even though it's my proposal?
Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right. Run it up, Mike.
You know the drill by now, folks. Let's go. You guys are going to love this. One team abstained.
I do not know what our bylaws say about this. Does anyone have any clarification?
We rediscuss and then we revote.
I think if it doesn't get a majority, then it didn't pass.
Can I suggest a tabled or a formation of a committee to further flush this out? It sounds like there's a great idea here, but there's too many friendly amendments, too many concerns that a table with a committee to reevaluate. Is that an option, or is that conflict with any bylaws?
Well, I think first of all, while we're answering that question, if maybe Bob or Noah, if one of you could take a look at our bylaws and just confirm what we do in a tie, like what the guidelines here, what Robert Rules of Order say. While they're looking for that, assuming that it doesn't pass because you need a majority, which is probably what it's going to say. Keith, would you be willing to accept a committee put together to discuss this and table it and bring this up at a later time? Or are you looking? I guess that's probably going to be your primary option if it doesn't pass.
Yeah, let's see what the bylaws say, but we'll go from there.
Okay, let's put this on pause and we'll have an answer for you in the next couple of minutes by the time we're done with this next proposal. How's that sound, folks? Okay.
And I think that even if we do put a committee together, the soonest we could vote on it again would be next season, because since it's not happening in the meeting.
That is correct. So we need to get some clarification on the bylaws. We're going to have our Cracker Jack team look that up right now while we look at the next proposal. Steve Curley, Tier Texans Proposal F, Low Point Division. Floor is yours.
What's up, guys? Yeah, I put this proposal together. Obviously, really excited about the USA Low Point wheelchair rugby team and World Games competition. But I put this proposal together because I feel like, I see a great opportunity for further development of low point players, and it doesn't conflict with the USWRA season. This is actually a proposal for the low point season to be from May to September. Again, benefits, further development for those low pointers that don't get a whole lot of playing time during the USWRA season. From an international level standpoint, look, we really haven't put a huge focus on low point rugby. This could also contribute to, further development for the USA team, the low point team on an international level. And then beyond that, even further development for USAWR, which again, compete on a premier level against other countries. And so I'm not going to read the proposal to you, but I just think that overall it kind of takes the game back to its roots, what the game was intended for. And so that's all I have.
Okay. In the interest of full disclosure, we did not get to have a full discussion of this in the bylaws committee, but we did have some email discussion on it. Here's the major takeaways. The benefits are it serves the population that's underserved in our sport. Right now, the largest classification represented, I think, are 1-0s in the league. So we have more low pointers than we have high pointers, but most lineups will only have one low pointer. Or many lineups anyway. So this would allow more players to actively be participating in games, and there's benefit there. This is proposed to take place during the off season, so there should not be a scheduling challenge in that regard. So it meets a need.
Can I borrow your hands? Of course. Yeah. Anybody. Yeah.
Okay, you get that. Can you mute that for us, Mike? So again, this allows us to have.
Okay, this goes in like right here. We're gonna face it. It goes in this
your
space
mic
right
is
here.
on.
Okay, flip that up, and then you lift that up straight. This lifts up. Yeah. Yeah, and that fits inside there.
I see. And you want to
mute him?
Yeah.
Everyone's muted.
Cool. You can unmute yourself as needed. So again, the benefits of this are it serves population that is underrepresented in the sport. We have a lot of low pointers that there's just not enough time for teams to get the low pointers in current game models. This is during the off season, and there's some real benefits there. There's some concern that this may be a bit of a strain on officials who will now be expected to go year round. And maybe officials would be able to comfortably cover this, or maybe not. Like that's a question to look at. Also, this proposal does not necessarily fund it doesn't fund the low point championships, right? And so there's not a mechanism that guarantees funding here. We'd have to look and see if this registration fee covers that and how much gets funneled to that. So there's not a mechanism to actually fund the championship. So that would then fall on a host to fund that without any funding necessarily. So that's a consideration. Another limitation could potentially be that, I guess there was one request for a friendly amendment. I think that was not voted yes, was that this does not have any sort of residency structure, right? So the concern that was brought up is that this could sort of put together super teams. You might get 3 or 4 low point teams versus if you used a residency or a geography model, you might get more teams participating. So this may boil down to a few superstar teams. And so there was a concern about that from at least one member of the bylaws committee. So those are the benefits and any reservations that the bylaws committee had. This time we'll open this up for discussion and comment.
I will say that I had a lot of people reach out on this in support. To your point about the super teams, in order to kind of minimize, we want to maximize participation in this. That's the whole point of this for specifically low pointers. So Dan, I think you had a suggestion on maybe how to minimize super teams, maximize participation. You want to kind of talk about that briefly?
Yeah, well, I think that we should try to keep it regional and try to keep some sort of residential things going, just like we do with the, we don't want this to turn into a 2-team league. I think this is more about development and having a good time and getting as many guys out. I mean, I didn't discuss this with you when we talked, Curly, but I think we ought to also eliminate the international players. If our goal is to develop our own, why should we bring in international players? So, yeah, I don't think, it's new. It's gonna turn into what it's gonna turn into. I think we could probably support about a good 8 to 10 team league with this easily. With it seems like some different people have had interest. I mean, I'm thinking we could put together a good team like Florida, Georgia, maybe even reach into the Carolinas, depending on if anyone is trying to form anything closer there. But yeah.
Hey, can I suggest a friendly addendum to my own proposal?
You can.
Yeah. So what if we did something along the lines of, because I want to keep this simple. I'm not trying to overcomplicate this at all. But something along the lines of, you can roster, it's an 8-man roster from your team and the 2 other closest teams to you. Something of that nature to allow a bigger pool of low pointers, but it also regionalizes it as well. So I'll throw that out there as a.
It's your amendment. I mean, it's your proposal, so you can make any friendly amendment you want. Did you want to
I'll
also
do that, and I'd love to hear feedback on the international thing. That's a great point, Dan, and something that I had not thought about. This really is about USA development. So I'm totally good with keeping it, a domestic low point league.
You want to discuss it first, or do you want to make that amendment as well?
I'd like to hear discussion first, but.
Yeah, no, I, as someone who coaches a team that has a majority low pointers, I really like this. I think I think it's going to help the league develop a ton, and I think it's going to just get more court time for players that in those lineups that have, a high and 2 mids, and I'm just constantly trying to find play time for low pointers and develop them. So I think this is awesome. In terms of the international, I'm in agreement with Dan. I do think it is a USA thing, and I think we actually could regionalize and create this this level of competition without international contribution. So
hey,
I like it a lot.
Mike, I'd like to go ahead and make that friendly addendum.
Okay. So we have 2 amendments. One is that you can your low point team can consist of the 2 closest teams to you and your team, and then the second is that that you can that we will not have international players in this low point league. Any additional discussion or comments about this proposal?
I have a quick point, Dr. Cunningham. Would it be beneficial to eliminate postseason for the first year to eliminate some logistical issues, and would that provide a little bit more likelihood of success for the first season to get that behind us if it passes. Just curious as to whether eliminating the postseason in the first season would be beneficial.
Steve Curley, do you want to answer that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, could we word it in a way if we're not able to find a postseason host that's willing to take on that financial responsibility?
I mean, my recommendation, Steve, is you can always have a tournament and call it the championships.
Right.
Right. Like it doesn't actually have to be and if we have extra funding, I mean, I'm sure the league would definitely consider a request for funding if we have money. But you can always have a low point championship at the end of the year. It just wouldn't be necessarily a USWRA national championship. We could maybe recognize it later if we wanted to. I mean, also it doesn't. I mean, you don't have to not do it. It's totally your call if you would like to do it or not, Steve. It's your proposal.
Yeah, well, and just to add to that, I mean, so a championship, we don't have to structure it the same way we structure our championship, where we have to have classification and all that, because all of that is going to happen, in our postseason, in our regular league. So, I mean, we're more looking for, there's a tournament at the end of the year and it's going to be the championship. So we don't have to do and we don't have, the whole board doesn't have to be there because there's not going to be a meeting or anything else. It's just, this is it's going to be a big thing, but it's going to be kind of a little bit more on the down low, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it is plausible that some people will just play this league and not the other, or vice versa, right? And so it is plausible that some players may not get classified during the traditional USWRA league.
I think, that would be, it is plausible, but not likely. And I think that they would need to have, I think as part of this proposal, they would need to be classified accordingly. 0.5 to 1.5 as their original class.
Noted.
But Amy, there wouldn't be any there would be no classification during the summer anyway, because they're not playing in official 8-point games. I mean, the point of this is to have a fun league, to get players more playing time, develop the low point division. So let's not overthink and overregulate what we're trying to do. I mean,
I want to keep this simple, guys. Let's get this going. And then on down the road, if we need to formalize it, make more structural changes, we do it then. But for right now, let's keep it simple.
That's where I don't know if the geographic limitations would hold back certain teams. Like if you're trying to I don't think our team would have a problem with it, or in the Northeast, or kind of mid-Atlantic. But if the hope is just get as many teams as possible, does the 2 closest team rule, could that hold back people from getting folks together to compete? Just thought.
You could have players petition the commissioner. If you could put that as a friendly amendment. If players cannot play with 2 closest teams for a reason, they can petition the commissioner to then compete with the next closest team that's rostered.
I'd be good with that. Yeah. So a few other things that are part of the prop: max 3.5 points. That's regular low point rugby. Extra half point for per female player on the court. Extra half point for player age 45 or older. Here's a little bit different: max of 4.5 points with extra point allowances. So that's something that is a little bit different. And then other differences is that we play by the regular USWRA rules. So there's 12 seconds to get the ball over half court, 40-second try clock. That's different from the way that we have typically played, but that would also help us more align with how international low point rugby is being played.
And again, just for everyone to understand, the nice benefits sort of formalizing this is it gives insurance coverage and it gives the ability to utilize referees more effectively. So it does, it gives in other words, it's more sort of formal and gives you more protection than just trying to do this independently, right?
Right.
And enshrines it within the league structure. Other questions? Point to discussion. Oh, it looks like Bradley Bowe, you have your hand up.
I do. Yeah, this was still just about postseason. I'm kind of thinking this may not be a great question anymore, but would we even have to change anything about it if we decide, we can't do postseason for any reason? I mean, is that even something that needs to be changed or discussed right now? Can that just be something that, is open for interpretation later on?
I'd lean on the commissioner, but he seems like a pretty reasonable human. Thank you.
At least
And
most of the
Tim,
time.
to you, what's up, Bob?
At least most of the time.
Tim, you have your hand up as well?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just in the interest of keeping things simple and making sure that this additional league takes off. I mean, we get rid of the residency requirements and even allow an import player, because if we're the only like official low point league, I'd say that it would be in our best interest to be inclusive. And then we just regulate it as we go,
I do believe that the UK is a low point.
Joe, we weren't able to fully hear you. What was that?
Yeah, say that
Sorry.
again, please.
Sorry, guys. I do believe that the UK has a low point league or is working on trying to start that.
Thanks.
So it sounds like Tim is making a request, Steve, to then not have any sort of residency structure and to also have international players. So you get to decide which way you want to fall on this.
So I think, sorry, Tim, I think I would prefer, again, this is about USA development, developing our players. So I'm good with the no international. I like the idea of going to the commissioner. If there's an outlier, you're not able to play. Bob smiling. I think he would be supportive of things that, that kind of makes sense just from a common sense. I'd like to keep let's try to keep it regional. Again, I'm trying to promote participation in this. I don't want to discourage, play. And so I'd like to go ahead and keep that original addendum on your team plus the two closest teams to roster a low point team.
This time, are there any more discussion or do we have a motion to vote?
I got a question on the two closest teams thing. So say WASA doesn't elect to have a team, Chicago does, and like the four other teams around Chicago doesn't. So we can kind of, will you have a situation where like Chicago's stacking a team, pulling players from all the teams around them because they're not rostering teams? Or
No,
am I
it's
thinking this wrong?
It's the two closest teams from your USWRA regular season location. So whatever the two geographic closest teams to Chicago would then be the two teams they could pull from.
Okay.
Correct.
Is there any way that we could go by like the actual geographic classifications that are in place now for the regular season? That would open up a little bit larger player pool.
Can you elaborate what you mean?
So there's the Great Lakes division, there's the West Coast division that is based on in the regular season. So it's instead of just Chicago and Wausau and whatever that is, Grand Rapids, it would be everyone in that, the 4 or 5 teams in that Great Lakes division.
I mean, I don't know if we have a formal division. We don't really have that, I don't think. I
Yeah,
mean,
we have 7 racks that are in charge of 7 divisions.
I see.
So for example, You can have 2 teams per rack, 2 teams per division. That just gives you a wider pool and a max of 14 teams. I just think that's what Brad is thinking of by staying with our existing regions.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I apologize for the confusion.
Okay, so what would that, so again, confirm how many divisions do we have?
7.
Okay, so Steve, would you be amenable to?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
If that would help this. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm good.
so then there's a request to say that basically you must compete within teams from your rack division. We'll get those posted online for players that are unfamiliar or coaches that are unfamiliar. So in essence, you could have multiple teams from a specific rack.
Right.
You must play with players within your rack division. That's a friendly amendment. Do we have a motion to vote?
Make a motion.
Can I say one thing before we vote?
Sure.
So this is Christy Van Haver from Grand Rapids Thunder. I should put my video on maybe. Okay. So what this reminds me of is the NWBA, and this is, I'm not saying that low pointers are women. I'm just drawing a parallel here. So in the NWBA, within the basketball season, there are rostered co-ed teams that have men and women, and there are women's teams. And so there are women that play on both teams. And it happens within the same basketball season. So I guess I'm drawing a parallel here because I'm struggling as a coordinator who coordinates a lot of different teams throughout the year. And now there's a potential of adding a low point team during what we would be rugby off season. And I don't know as a coordinator if I have the budget for that and I can add that to my plate and all of that. But I'm in support of having low pointers and having low pointers developed and playing time and all that we're proposing. So and this just complicates things. But my thought is, does it make more sense to have it happen during the same season as rugby, September to April, and have it just be similar to what the NWBA does, in that you could actually be dual rostered. You could be rostered on a co-ed rugby team. You could be rostered on a low point team. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is the first time I'll say an opinion on this, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. I do think that and I have a bit of a basketball background as well. I do think that the rugby population is a little different. Traveling is more intensive. Like a basketball team rents their own vehicles. They travel. They sometimes need like 1 or 2 ABs tops, right? Sometimes no ABs often. And most of the competition, unless you're an elite D1 team, can be done in driving distance for a lot of teams. I think with rugby needing to fly to more tournaments, compressing all this in a shorter time window might be and I do think also like the strain of like we have way fewer referees would be a real strain. I would assume if it were in the same window of time, but any of our refs or Steve Curley can comment on that.
I was going to say the same thing, Mike. Logistically, right now it may be difficult to properly staff those tournaments with officials.
Yeah, Mike, that was my concern by having it overlap with the regular season. So that's why I kind of had like a condensed season May to September. So
it sounds like you would not accept that friendly amendment.
Correct.
Okay. And Lori, I saw your hand come up real quick before we have a motion to vote, or did you put that down?
I did, but I was kind of along the lines of what Christy was saying, that conceptually, I like this idea. I really do. And for all of the reasons that everyone has shared, logistically, funding, volunteers, thinking about coordinating a second tournament, those type of things in the moment is a bit overwhelming. I like the idea of focusing on the games and the playing versus the postseason part of it, because it gets at what it sounds like is the gist of what you're trying to get, right? Playtime, exposure, things like that, without this becoming a financial burden to anyone. And I don't know what the interest is of teams and what their funding sources are to support it. So conceptually, I'm on board. It's the details that I'm struggling with.
I just want to keep it simple, guys. I mean, look, we can, if the proposal passes, if we see that there are, and I'm sure there will be challenges and things that come up, but I also see that from my opinion, again, the whole purpose is development, getting more low pointers on the court, more active, healthier, so forth and so on. I just don't want to overthink it. I get it from a coordinator standpoint, I guess. I understand that. But those are challenges that happen during the regular season anyway. So, you know, we'll just have to work through those as we see fit. So,
Do we have a motion to vote?
I make a motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Let's vote.
Hey, the vote thing didn't come up for me this time. Is that?
Mike, you're on mute.
Are you having connectivity problems? Because that's the only thing we've run into. There's been one other person that had connectivity problems for a minute and then changed and was able to vote.
No, I don't have any connectivity issues. I checked my speed. I'm at 100 Mbps.
Are you on a computer or on a phone?
Computer.
Would it help you to know that it wasn't close?
Oh, never mind then. All right.
There we go. Passes.
thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Okay, let's scroll back to E. I hate to go backtrack, but we need to clarify this. Noah, you here, right?
You're on mute, Noah.
Yes, and I read page.
You're breaking our tie on proposal E.
Well, even though I feel like this affects us probably the most as the host, I think it's a great idea. So with the 2 amendments to the amendment, I vote yes.
Okay, we have postseason realignment. Okay, last proposal. Back to you, Keith. This is the play-in game proposal.
Okay, guys. Last one. I'll try to be quick. So the current bylaws state that if the host team does not qualify, there is a play-in game in which the 16th seed plays the host for a chance to participate in the national tournament. And this was designed to encourage participation, encourage more hosts to apply to host the event. After seeing how it affected, I'll say, Shepherd, and after talking to many different people around the league, trying to find a way where you don't have to play a play-in game. It's great in theory, but financially it is a tremendous undertaking. So to fly a team to a tournament, you're looking at somewhere between $10,000 to $15,000 all in on expenses. And I give you a scenario, and I think I put this in there, if San Diego is the 16th seed and Nationals is hosted, I'll say in Florida, they got to go all the way across the country to potentially play one game. And if they happen to lose that game, they are no longer in the tournament. They've spent all that money to get there, to subsequently stay in a hotel, not participate. And we can't really be flexible and just pick a flight whenever we want after we lose our first game and go home. So I know from working where I work, it would be a really hard conversation for me to have with my donors and supporters of our program to say, we use your money to go all the way across the country to play one game. So and for teams that are self-funded, to spend all of that money is, hard on that individual that are paying their own way. So the solution we came up with was that the host team will automatically qualify, and the fourth place finisher of each national semifinal, one of them will go to nationals, and that will be determined by the the current term, the ranking committee. Is that what I believe is their title? Is that correct? Competition committee.
Competition committee.
Thank you. So that is the proposal. I know it's good in theory, but again, financially, it's in a lot of ways a misuse of funds to go out there for one game. So especially when you look at for the host program, it's a home game for them. They're playing for nothing to lose, and then the team that qualifies has to travel that far, and really has all the pressure on them. So that's it in a nutshell. Any questions?
Again, the reason we initially put this forward was to, as Keith said, was to incentivize hosts to host. We had a run for a while where we could not get a host for nationals, and we really struggled kind of forcing people to be hosts. And we've had more luck recently, but it is really good for the league when a host is able to compete nationals, because we just get more spectatorship and more media attention, and there's some real benefits there. The downside of that, of course, is a team who is potentially higher ranked than that host would not qualify, right? So the benefits and limitations to this are fairly clear. But the way the rules currently stand, the host gets a second shot anyway. So this cements them, but it does knock out that other team. So open for discussion and comments.
Well, I guess I should add too, now with postseason realignment, the host would automatically fall into that new Division III category.
Right. If they didn't qualify in another spot, they would qualify for Division.
In another spot. So it would take one of the last two qualifiers, essentially, that would have qualified for the tournament, and the competition committee would select out of those two which one would go.
I just want to add, as far as the financial burden goes, and who ends up being out of pocket and where, or from a sponsorship perspective, I think, there's probably a good argument on both sides, because if somebody is spending 150 grand to host nationals and they don't get to play, and none of their partners that paid for that get to watch the team that they were supporting with nationals, the much larger financial burden is on the host. But reading what you've written there, it really is a non-issue, I guess, at that point. I just wanted to point that out.
Other comments?
I have a comment. I've had to be that play-in game under a totally different circumstance, but yeah, it's awful having to travel all the way to somewhere and thinking that you could possibly be going home after one game. And we played a much closer game than the game that was played. So yeah, I totally understand. And I think this might be a better solution than a playing game.
I have a question with our rankings come out pretty late. Semifinals are not on the same weekend. You're that last place in your semifinal. Now you can't book tickets till you find out if you're actually in or if you're going to get bumped by that being that 16th seed.
Well, you do know before that before that semifinal, that you basically, to guarantee you're making it, you need to finish 3 or higher in that semifinal. If you finish 4, you may
Guaranteed,
be out.
but if you're the last one, like this year, what would you have had? Like a week before we actually got rankings out? We only had 2 weeks between the semifinals and nationals, and then it took almost a week to get the rankings out. Now you're booking extremely late flights, possibly because you had to wait.
So would you feel better than if there was a friendly amendment that within 24 hours the competition committee decided of the two, if the nationals host does not qualify through traditional means, that within 24 hours the competition committee will decide which of the teams that finished 4th in their semifinal will get to go to nationals? Would that make that more viable for you?
I think you mean 5th because of postseason realignment.
Thank you,
No,
Bob. I was just about to say that.
Okay, there you go. Okay, yes.
With the postseason realignment, excuse me, is this even a problem? Will the host team even be close to not making it?
Plausibly. I mean,
Plausibly, and we took that out in the friendly amendment of the last one. We actually had that in there and removed it because we were going to discuss this now. Plausibly, it can happen. I mean, I think a 24-hour period for the committee to get together to discuss 2 teams and say which one goes to national, I think is realistic. And Ryan, to your point, yes, you might need to wait for flights, but at least you know you're going to play 6 games when you get there, if you get there. So perhaps it's worth waiting.
But I think we had a discussion amongst in the leadership call that, we can't have the time frame we had this year to turn things around with only it being a week, just from logistics standpoints on a lot of things.
Yeah, it's cost either way. I think I would prefer the play-in just to make sure the team that wins gets in. Also, another point here, being we just approved that other postseason, does that we just removed that language of the host in our previous postseason, didn't we? So don't we got to actually add that back in first?
No, it's the play-in game is still in the bylaws. It's just
okay.
It'd be further down the rankings now, but they'd still be a play-in game.
Okay.
I just would hate to see a team spend that much money and only play 1 game. And I also understand from a tournament perspective, if you're going to host a national event, you want to be seen to your sponsors and supporters. So this was I'd say the best way we could come up with it, where it made the most sense, where at least your costs were a little more predictable, and I'll leave it at that.
But I think for us from classification, it helps too. It really messed with our schedule, having a play-in game at the time the play-in game had to be. And we also had to see athletes on a team then that didn't play the rest of nationals, which made it very difficult and took spots of other teams that needed to be seen before they're playing games the next morning.
Yeah, and I'll be honest real quick. I was kind of sick to my stomach knowing that beforehand, before I knew we were going to get smoked on the court, if we were to win, that a team had to do that. So I wasn't feeling good about it, at all. But then there was that other side. I was like, all right, the people that paid for this at least get to be there and see us play once. So I was kind of torn between the two. I definitely didn't want a team to come out and only play 1 game. And on the other hand, I felt like we almost had a responsibility to the people that paid for the tournament. Just throwing that out there.
Well, and to further elaborate, I think, if you finish in that last spot of your national semifinal, you have an understanding that is you and one other team. Right now, the way it's written, that competition committee can essentially take a team that in theory finished 3rd in their national semifinal and still put them as the 16th seed and put them in that play-in game. So it allows everybody else to purchase flights if they've finished higher than that before the competition committee comes out with all of their rankings. So you're really only discussing 2 teams.
Hey, can I jump in real quick? I wonder, because this actually happened to New York a long time ago. We had a play-in game with Brooks. This is probably like 10 years ago in Louisville that we lost in. And if there's a way to leave it up to the team that would play the play-in game and say, you know, knowing the risk or knowing the possibility of playing one game, maybe the lower ranked team could make a decision to either get to a committee or take the risk. Because if the team is willing to it, then there's really no downside. If, you know, knowing that, you know, they might only play one game and then that's it. So maybe that's an option. I don't know.
It sounds like we have a motion to vote.
I'll make one if it's not, or second it.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, let's vote. You're on mute, Mike.
I just keep missing that. It's so loud over here. I apologize. I'd like to keep myself on mute.
Okay. All right. Well, the good news is my job is done. So I think I'm handing this back over to someone else as we finish up our candidates.
I think this one goes back to Noah.
Do you want to, well, for the 3 positions that were up, president, first vice president, and secretary, there weren't anybody else, so the 3 of them are going to stay.
Just to confirm, you do have the option if anyone wants to nominate themselves at this time, you can do that consistent with our bylaws.
Wait a moment.
Crickets. Okay, sounds like no one else is interested in running at this time.
And so everybody knows, if you hadn't seen the packet, the financials are in there on the last few pages. So if anybody wants to take a look at that, or like Sid had said, if anybody has questions, they can contact him directly. But otherwise, I just want to say thanks again. This went fairly smooth. I think there were some great discussions. And I also am kind of excited to see all these new amendments put into action. So if there's nothing else, I guess we make a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
All right.
Second.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.
Or stay on.
Thank you, everybody.